It started like every other entrance, calm, powerful, confident. Then one fan said the wrong thing, and the legend lost it. This moment had the entire WWE universe frozen. It was a Tuesday night, just another city, another stop on the endless road. The music hit, that iconic, predatory theme that had echoed in arenas for 2 decades. And out he came, Randy Orton. He walked with a practiced economy of motion, a stillness that was more menacing than any roar. His eyes, famously cold and distant, scanned the thousands of faces without truly seeing any of them. It was a performance honed to perfection. The slow walk, the deliberate pause on the ramp, the way his gaze swept the crowd as if they were prey. We'd all seen it 100 times. Backstage on the monitors, it looked like business as usual. The production team was calm, the commentators were running through their pre-planned lines, and his opponent, Drew McIntyre, was already in the ring, waiting for the inevitable confrontation. Every step Orton took was measured. Every glance was scripted by years of instinct. He was the Viper, a character so deeply ingrained that it was impossible to tell where the performance ended and the man began. On that night, the air felt no different. It was just another show, another entrance, another step in the long, exhausting dance of a legend. The crowd roared, the lights flashed, and Randy Orton was exactly where he was supposed to be, in control. As Orton approached the ringside area, the roar of the crowd became a wall of individual voices. Shouts of love, taunts of hate. It was all part of the job, the background noise he had learned to filter out long ago. But then, a single voice cut through. It wasn't its volume that made it different, but its precision. It was a comment, sharp and personal, aimed not at the character but at the man behind it. For a split second, something flickered across Orton's face. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something closer to surprise, like a sleepwalker suddenly woken. The camera, focused on a wide shot of the arena, missed it entirely, but those of us watching closely backstage, we saw it. The infinitesimal pause in his stride. The subtle tightening of his jaw. The way his eyes, for the first time that night, focused on a single point in the crowd. The noise of the arena didn't change, but in that small, private space around Orton, the world went silent. He had heard it. And in that moment, the carefully constructed wall between Randy Orton, the performer, and Randy Orton, the human being, began to fracture. The machine had stalled, a single line of bad code interrupting a flawless program. The crowd was still cheering for the Viper, completely unaware that the man inside had just been struck. For a professional like Randy Orton, instinct is everything. Decades of training teach you to ignore it all, the signs, the chants, the personal insults. You are a product, a character inside a story. Your role is to hit your mark, deliver your lines, and never, ever break the fourth wall. That training was screaming at him now. Keep walking. Get in the ring. It's just noise. But another part of him, a part that had been suppressed for years under the weight of the legend, refused to listen. This was a different kind of fire. It wasn't the slow-burn, methodical anger of the Viper. It was the hot, instantaneous rage of a man pushed too far. We could almost feel the battle happening inside him from the production truck. The performer fighting the person. The legend wrestling with the man who just wanted to defend his own name. He stood there, frozen for a heartbeat that felt like an eternity. His entire career was built on control, on being the one who was always thinking 3 steps ahead. But in that moment, he wasn't thinking at all. He was feeling. And the raw, unfiltered emotion that surged through him was something far more dangerous than any RKO. It was the truth. And it was threatening to spill out live, in front of millions, with no script to guide it. In the ring, Drew McIntyre shifted his weight. He could feel it. Even from 50 feet away, the energy had changed. The grand, theatrical entrance had stopped dead. Orton was no longer playing to the crowd. He was locked in a silent, intense battle with a single, unseen person. The referee, Eddie Orengo, glanced nervously from Orton to the corner, his hand hovering near his earpiece, waiting for instructions that weren't coming. The commentators, caught off guard, stumbled over their words. their hype-filled script suddenly useless. They tried to play it off as Orton soaking in the atmosphere, but their voices lacked conviction. Everyone could sense the deviation from the plan. The air grew thick with an unscripted tension. Backstage, the chatter in the gorilla position stopped. Producers leaned closer to the monitors, their faces etched with confusion. "What's he doing?" one of them muttered into the headset. "Is he okay?" There was no answer. For those few seconds, Randy Orton was off script. He was an island of raw, unpredictable reality in a sea of carefully choreographed entertainment. The show had been hijacked, not by a rebellious superstar, but by a moment of pure, unfiltered human emotion. And nobody, not even the man himself, knew what was going to happen next. Then he moved. It wasn't the explosive lunge of an attacker, but something far more chilling. Randy Orton turned his body slowly, deliberately, to face the fan. The motion was fluid, economical, and utterly terrifying. He didn't point, he didn't shout, he didn't gesture. He simply looked. And that look was enough to silence the entire section of the arena. The boisterous taunts and cheers died in their throats, replaced by a vacuum of stunned silence. It was a look that no script could ever write, a gaze that stripped away the character of the Viper and revealed something far more primal. The cameras scrambled to catch it, but they were too late. They were still focused on the ring, on the story they were supposed to be telling. This was a different story, unfolding in the shadows between the barricade and the ramp. The security guards along the rail tensed, their hands moving instinctively towards their belts, unsure if they were witnessing a threat or just a part of the show. But this felt different. This wasn't performance, this was confrontation. In that moment, the thousands of people in the arena, the millions watching at home, ceased to matter. The world had shrunk to a 10-foot space, containing a fan who crossed a line and a legend who had been pushed over it. The silence spread like a contagion. The initial pocket of quiet around Orton began to expand, row by row, as people realized this was not part of the act. A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. Phones came up, not to record a superstar's entrance, but to capture a moment of raw, unscripted drama. In the ring, Drew's posture changed from a fighter's stance to that of a concerned colleague. He took a half step forward, his face a mask of confusion and worry. He was supposed to be Orton's enemy tonight, but in this moment of broken reality, their storyline alliance was irrelevant. The referee started walking towards the ropes, speaking urgently into his headset, relaying the scene to a frantic backstage. "He's stopped. He's staring someone down in the crowd." "I don't know what's happening." The director's voice crackled back, a mix of panic and command. "Stay with Drew! Do not shoot Orton! I repeat, stay on McIntyre!" They were trying to protect the show, to keep the illusion alive. But it was too late. The illusion was already shattered. The carefully crafted world of professional wrestling had just been punctured by a needle of pure reality, and the whole arena could feel the air leaking out. The performance had stopped. Something real was happening. It could have been a second, it could have been a minute. Time seemed to warp in the thick, tense air. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it was over. Orton's shoulders relaxed by a fraction. He broke his gaze from the fan, took a deep, centering breath, and turned back towards the ring. The mask was back on. He raised his arms in his signature pose on the ring steps, the music swelling as if on cue. The cameras found him again, and to the casual viewer at home, it might have looked like nothing happened. But it was all wrong. The pose was there, but the energy was gone. His movements, usually so fluid and arrogant, were now stiff, almost robotic. He was going through the motions, his body executing the script, while his mind was clearly a million miles away. He climbed into the ring and went face to face with Drew, but the typical fire in his eyes was replaced by a distant, glassy stare. Drew, a true professional, tried to salvage the moment, snarling and shouting to build heat for their match. But it felt hollow. He was yelling at a ghost. Orton was physically present, but the man, the performer, had checked out. He was trapped in the echo of what had just happened, a moment of real-world conflict that made their scripted battle feel meaningless. Backstage, controlled chaos erupted. What was that? Somebody tell me what that was, a producer demanded into the comm system. No one had a clear answer. The fan was being quietly spoken to by security, but the damage was done. The entire rhythm of the show had been thrown off. A match that had been meticulously planned now felt dangerously unpredictable. The biggest concern was Orton's headspace. Was he focused enough to perform safely? Was he going to be professional? Or was that raw anger still simmering just beneath the surface, ready to boil over mid-match? Drew deserved to know what he was walking into. The referee received quiet instructions in his earpiece. Keep them separated. Talk to Randy. Make sure he's with us. Watch him like a hawk. In that ring, under the bright lights, two performers were about to engage in a simulated fight, but the most intense conflict was the one no one could see. Orton struggled to shove his genuine rage back into its box and become the Viper again. The story for the fans was about a championship rivalry, but the real story, in that moment, was about a man trying to hold himself together long enough to do his job after being publicly provoked in a way no one had anticipated. The match happened. Moves were executed, spots were hit, a winner was declared. The WWE machine, as it always does, kept rolling. The incident was never mentioned on commentary. No replays were ever shown. To the official narrative, it simply did not happen. It became a piece of wrestling folklore, a story told by fans who were in that section, a you-had-to-be-there moment that couldn't be captured in a highlight reel. It wasn't a spectacular outburst. There was no physicality, no grand drama for the cameras to feast on. It was something quieter, more human. It was a brief, silent glimpse behind the curtain that revealed more than any tell-all interview ever could. It showed the immense, unspoken weight that comes with portraying a character for 2 decades. The pressure to absorb the cheers and the jeers with equal indifference. The discipline it takes to never let the real world intrude upon the fictional one. For 20 years, Randy Orton had masterfully blurred that line. On that night, for just a few seconds, the line vanished completely. And what we saw was not the apex predator, but a man, a husband and a father, pushed to a very real, very human breaking point. It was a reminder that the performance, no matter how perfect, is still just a performance. In the end, what makes these performers legends isn't just the titles they win or the matches they have. It's the moments of absolute belief they create. They make us forget we're watching a show. And the irony is, the most unforgettable moments are often the ones that aren't planned, the ones where the artifice falls away. That night wasn't about a hero or a villain. It wasn't about a storyline. It was about the crushing pressure of living a life under a microscope, where every action is judged and every vulnerability is a target. It was about the thin, fragile veneer that separates the global icon from the person underneath. We demand our superstars to be larger than life, to be impervious to the noise. We forget that they are people, carrying the same burdens we all do. Only they must do it in front of millions. That brief, silent confrontation wasn't a failure of professionalism. It was a profound display of humanity. It was the moment a man, known for his perfect cold control, lost it for just an instant and in doing so, became more real than ever. It's a reminder that even legends are human, and sometimes the mask cracks.